Imagine being told you're too boring to love, then dumped for a struggling musician, only for karma to deliver a cosmic gut punch just 6 months later. Because sometimes, the universe has a wickedly ironic sense of humor. Let's rewind, because the story of how my life completely changed and how someone else's imploded actually begins with a simple, quiet life. I'm Mark, 32, a mechanical engineer in Colorado. My world was stable, predictable, and frankly, I loved it. I owned a comfortable house that I bought when I was 28, had a loyal dog named Cooper who was basically my best friend, and weekends were filled with hiking or tinkering around the house. That's what relaxed me. I know, I probably sound like the most generic guy on the planet. But here's the thing, I genuinely liked my life. I had a clear career path, my finances were in order, I wasn't drowning in debt, and I could actually afford vacations without checking my bank account 17 times first. My friends used to joke I was the dad friend, the guy who always had jumper cables and knew how to fix a garbage disposal at 2 in the morning. I never thought that being reliable would be a problem. Who knew that could be a fatal flaw? Then I met Chloe. We were together for 3 years, and for most of that time, it felt genuinely good. We clicked at a coworker's barbecue. Chloe was charming, kind, always laughing at my terrible jokes, the kind of girl you'd proudly introduce to your parents. A dental receptionist, she lived in an apartment with her roommate, but soon spent most of her nights at my place. She said my house felt like a home. She'd spoil Cooper with treats, cook dinner while I tinkered on whatever project I had going, and we'd just be a normal couple, watching movies on the couch. I truly believed we were building something real, something lasting. The first hairline fracture in our foundation appeared so subtly, I almost missed it. Chloe's friend group was, well, they were everything I wasn't. Unemployed musicians, bartenders working just enough to cover rent, people living in vans and calling it freedom. That kind of crowd. I didn't judge them, truly, but it wasn't my scene. Still, Chloe started spending more and more time with them. She'd come home from their gatherings with this faraway look, like she'd witnessed something I could never grasp. Then came the little comments. At first, they were innocent. Oh, so-and-so just bought a motorcycle and took off to California, isn't that brave? Or another friend quit his job to tour with his band, so romantic. I'd nod, confused. To me, those sounded less like bravery and more like a fast track to financial ruin. But her comments grew sharper. Maybe we should be more spontaneous, she'd suggest, her voice laced with disappointment. Maybe we shouldn't plan everything down to the minute. I tried. I really did. I surprised her with weekend getaways, skipped my precious Saturday routines for her whims. But it was never enough. Because I couldn't fundamentally change myself. I'm the guy who checks the weather before a hike, schedules oil changes, reads instruction manuals. My brain just works that way. The breaking point slammed into me on a Tuesday night, completely out of the blue. I just walked in from work, thinking about new garage shelves. Chloe was on the couch, wearing a look I'd never seen, a strange mix of regret and something else. She didn't even let me drop my bag. We need to talk, she said, her voice flat. I sat. Cooper, always perceptive, immediately laid his head on my knee, as if sensing the coming storm. Chloe just stared, a solid 10 seconds of agonizing silence, before she finally spoke. She told me I was too nice. Not a compliment. It was a character flaw. As if being considerate, being stable, was somehow ruining her life. She needed someone with more edge. Someone who made her feel alive. Someone who didn't have a color-coded calendar and a retirement plan at 32. I wasn't stupid. I asked if there was someone else. The subtle shift in her expression screamed the answer before her lips even formed his name, Tyler. He was 29, played bass in a band called Broken Pavement, mostly open mics and dive bars. And apparently, he embodied everything I wasn't. Chloe gushed about how exciting he was, how he lived in the moment, how anything felt possible with him. I just sat there, numb, trying to process. 3 years, ending. Because I had my life together. She packed her things that night. I didn't try to stop her. What was there to say? She craved chaos, I offered stability. You can't compromise on something that fundamental. The strangest part? She seemed almost disappointed I wasn't losing my mind. No begging, no yelling, no dramatic gestures. Instead, I helped her carry boxes to her car, handed back her spare key, and watched her drive away. Cooper sat beside me on the porch, a silent sentinel. I remember thinking, at least my dog would never leave me for a bass player. The following weeks were a blur of strange, quiet solitude. I channeled everything into demolishing my bathroom. There's a surprising therapy in a sledgehammer meeting old tile. My friends? They were utterly baffled when I told them why Chloe left. My best friend just couldn't fathom how reliability became a deal-breaker. I wasn't heartbroken in a cinematic way, I was more confused, honestly. Like I'd been perfectly qualified for a job, only to be rejected for being too qualified. I kept replaying too nice, wondering when basic decency became something people ran from. But I didn't chase. I didn't text. I just kept living my quiet, predictable life, utterly oblivious that Chloe's exciting new adventure was about to detonate. Here's the thing about watching a car crash in slow motion from a distance. You get the details in fragments, a puzzle you never asked to solve. By the time you see the full, horrifying picture, it's usually too late for anyone involved. About 3 weeks after Chloe left, the whispers started through mutual friends. Tyler, the exciting bass player with all that edge Chloe craved, turned out to be exactly the guy you'd expect from someone in a band called Broken Pavement. 29 years old, worked part-time at a music shop, and I use worked generously because he apparently called in sick twice a week. No place of his own. He'd been couch surfing for a year, rotating apartments like a nomadic rock star cliché. His band played open mics, dive bars, the kind of gigs where half the crowd was there for cheap beer, not the music. And the kicker? Chloe, the woman who left me for being too stable, was now effectively bankrolling his entire existence. The details reached me in ripples, unwanted. A friend had coffee with Chloe's former roommate. Turns out, Chloe had moved in with Tyler at his friend's apartment. Tyler, of course, paid no rent. He was between opportunities. Chloe was covering his half, buying groceries, even fueling his constantly breaking down van. My friend recounted this as if it were the most obvious outcome imaginable. And honestly, it was. Another mutual acquaintance spotted them at a bar where Tyler's band was playing. Chloe sat alone, looking absolutely miserable, while Tyler openly flirted with other women between sets. The man who was supposed to make her feel alive was treating her like an ATM with the personality of a houseplant. I didn't reach out. Didn't offer advice. I just kept smashing bathroom tiles and meticulously planning my grout lines, like any normal, boring person who actually finishes what they start. Then, one Saturday morning, it happened. Home Depot. Plumbing aisle. I was trying to decipher which wrench I needed for my sink when I heard my name. I turned. I barely recognized Chloe. She'd lost weight, not healthily, but in a way that screamed exhaustion, like she hadn't slept or eaten properly in weeks. Her hair was a messy ponytail. She wore an oversized hoodie that clearly wasn't hers, and those dark circles under her eyes. I'd never seen them before. She tried to be casual, asked about my project. I told her about the bathroom. What else was there? She lingered, much longer than necessary, clearly fishing for a deeper conversation. I kept my answers brief, polite, because I saw exactly where this was going. She mentioned buying light bulbs. Her apartment's fixtures were broken. Her apartment, not their apartment. That single word told me everything about her living situation with Tyler. I mumbled an excuse about needing something from another section and escaped before she could ask for help, for advice, for whatever plea she was building up to. That encounter haunted me for days. Not out of pity, but out of sheer disbelief that this was the woman who once called me not exciting enough. A week later, the digital breadcrumbs began. First, Instagram likes on old photos. Then, comments on posts from months ago, the kind of probes people send to see if you're still listening. I wasn't. Then came the texts, deceptively casual. How's Cooper? Miss him. Obvious code for, I miss you. My replies were curt. One or two words, just enough to avoid being outright rude, but certainly not enough to crack open any doors. Then, late one night, almost midnight, my phone rang. I was in bed, reading. Cooper sprawled contentedly across half the mattress. Chloe's name glowed on the screen. My first instinct was to ignore it, to let it ring itself out. But something compelled me to answer. Curiosity? Residual obligation from 3 years? The second I said, hello, I heard it. Full-blown, gut-wrenching sobs. Not quiet tears, but ragged, breathless cries, making her words fragmented, disjointed. Tyler had spent their rent money on a vintage guitar he'd found on Craigslist. They'd erupted into a massive fight. He'd called her controlling, then stormed out. Now, she had no idea where he was or how she'd pay for the apartment. She'd called him 17 times, no answer. And then she said it. The words that didn't make me sad, but boiled my blood with a cold, predictable anger. You always knew what to do. I missed that. Like I was some discarded instruction manual she now desperately needed to retrieve from the trash. I took a deep, steadying breath. Staying calm, I told her exactly what she needed to hear, even if she desperately didn't want to. She needed to talk to her landlord, explore breaking the lease, find a roommate. And maybe, just maybe, stop expecting a 29-year-old couch surfer to magically become financially responsible. I offered no help. No money. No co-signing, no spare room. Just cold, practical advice, the kind you'd give a complete stranger asking for directions. Then I told her I had to go, work in the morning. She asked if we could meet in person. No, I said. Just like that. No explanation. No softening the blow. Just no. The calls continued for weeks. Not nightly, but often enough that I started sending them straight to voicemail. She'd leave increasingly desperate messages, help finding an apartment, rental recommendations, reviewing a lease because she couldn't understand the legal language. Each plea, thick with a desperation that screamed, I made a mistake, even if she was too proud to voice the words. I responded to none of them. Then suddenly, the messages stopped. And through the relentless grapevine, I learned why. Tyler had vanished. Not dramatically. He simply stopped coming back to the apartment, blocking Chloe on every platform. She was evicted, unable to cover the full rent alone. Now, she was sleeping on her friend's couch, the same friend she'd lived with before she moved in with me all those years ago. The brutal irony was lost on no one. Chloe had traded a 3-bedroom house with a yard and a loyal dog for a couch in a 1-bedroom apartment. All for Edge. She was learning the hard way that Edge doesn't pay bills or show up when things get tough. Me? I just kept working on my house, kept hiking, kept living my boring, predictable life, completely unaware that the universe was about to hand me something I never even knew I needed. Moving on isn't a grand, fireworks-laden declaration. It's quiet. It happens while you're absorbed in other things, until one day you realize you haven't thought about your ex in weeks. That's how Sarah entered my life. No soaring violins, no love at first sight. Just a regular workday that shifted everything. I was about 2 months post-Chloe, my bathroom renovation finally finished. I'd been pulled into a commercial development project, collaborating with a landscape architecture firm. Sarah was one of about 12 people in the kickoff meeting, sitting across the table, portfolio overflowing with meticulous site plans. She spoke with a quiet confidence that immediately conveyed she knew her stuff. She ran her own firm for 6 years. The way she discussed drainage systems and soil composition with the passion most people reserve for their favorite sports team, that told me everything about her work ethic. We ended up working closely, exchanging endless emails about grading and retaining wall specs. Technical conversations that would bore most people to tears, but felt completely natural to us. She had her own house, 20 minutes from mine, and was renovating her kitchen. When I mentioned my recent bathroom remodel, she didn't just nod politely, she asked specific questions about tile adhesive and grout sealant. 6 weeks into the project, we grabbed coffee after a site meeting. That conversation stretched for 3 hours without either of us even noticing. She talked about starting her business straight out of grad school, buying her fixer-upper, her 2 chaotic rescue dogs. I told her about Cooper, my hikes, how I'd processed a breakup by wielding a sledgehammer. She laughed. Not a judgmental laugh, but a warm, understanding one. She got it. Then, she said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. Being boring is underrated, Sarah said, a small smile playing on her lips. Reliability is attractive. It wasn't a pity compliment. It was a genuine observation, like she'd unlocked a secret most people spend their entire lives missing. A week later, we were officially dating. The difference between being with Sarah and being with Chloe was stark, like comparing a meticulously engineered house to one held together with duct tape and a prayer. Sarah didn't need me to be spontaneous, or edgy, or whatever elusive thing Chloe had been chasing. She just needed me to show up. To be consistent. Which, ironically, was the only thing I'd ever been truly good at. We'd plan weekend trips months in advance. We'd geek out over contractor recommendations and building code requirements. And somehow, that felt infinitely more romantic than any chaotic midnight adventure ever could. Her friends? Architects, engineers, project managers, people who understood that a 5-year plan wasn't boring, it was smart. 4 months into dating Sarah, roughly 6 months after Chloe walked out, I ran into Chloe and Tyler at a grocery store. That encounter, in one swift, brutal moment, crystallized everything. Sarah and I were there, picking up dinner supplies, casually debating a new recipe versus our tried-and-true pasta. We rounded the corner into the produce aisle, and there they were, Chloe and Tyler, arguing loudly in front of the organic apples. An argument, clearly, about money. Tyler looked exactly as you'd imagine, ripped jeans, faded band t-shirt, that perpetually exhausted expression of someone who'd been couch surfing far too long. Chloe looked better than she had at Home Depot, like she'd finally gotten some sleep and nourishment. But there was a new hardness in her face, a brittle edge, as if life had spent the last few months schooling her in lessons she desperately didn't want to learn. They saw us at the same instant. I watched Chloe's entire demeanor shift. Her eyes flickered from Tyler to me to Sarah. You could literally see her brain calculating, comparing her path to mine. Tyler, in his infinite wisdom, decided to speak. He smirked at me. Still boring, I see. Sarah, without missing a beat, looked him up and down, a cool assessment. Still broke, I see. I said nothing. Just slipped my arm around Sarah, tightening my grip, and kept walking. But I heard Chloe snap at Tyler behind us. Something about him making everything worse. I never found out what happened next. Because by then, I genuinely didn't care. The rest of my life? It just fell into place. Sarah and I moved in together about 8 months after our first date. We bought a house that needed work, but had good bones, exactly the kind of project we both loved. Cooper instantly adored Sarah's dogs, and our weekends transformed into this perfect rhythm of hardware store runs, mountain hikes, and shared renovation projects. A year later, we got married. Small, intimate, nothing fancy, just the people who truly mattered. Through the distant hum of the grapevine, I eventually heard that Chloe had moved back in with her parents. She'd found a more stable job at a medical office and was dating someone in finance. Good for her, honestly. I hope she's finally figuring out what she actually wants. Tyler, as far as I know, is still perpetually couch surfing, still playing dive bars, still waiting for that big break that talent without discipline never delivers. And me? I'm here, living in my boring, predictable house, with my wife who genuinely believes reliability is attractive. I'm working on boring engineering projects, planning boring vacations 6 months in advance, and I have never, ever been happier. Here's what this whole ridiculous ride taught me. Bad boys might give you stories, but truly good men? They give you a future. Chloe chased excitement and found chaos. She wanted edge and got instability. She yearned for someone who lived in the moment and got someone who couldn't plan past next weekend. Meanwhile, I just kept being exactly who I always was. And somehow, that turned out to be precisely what the right person was looking for all along. The universe really does have a bizarre sense of humor. You spend years believing your stability is a flaw, that being responsible makes you invisible. Then, someone comes along, sees those exact qualities, and thinks they're the most attractive things about you. Sarah didn't ask me to change. She didn't want me to be more spontaneous or conjure some mysterious etch. She wanted me to keep being the guy who checks the weather before hiking, reads instruction manuals, and has a retirement plan at 32. She wanted boring, and I gave her boring. And from that, we built something profound and real. The strangest twist? The last I heard about Chloe was from her own mother. About a year after everything blew up, I got a Facebook message from Chloe's mom. She thanked me. Thanked me for not taking Chloe back when she tried to crawl home. She said Chloe needed to learn that actions have consequences, that excitement is no substitute for partnership. She apologized for how things ended, saying I'd always been good to her daughter. I didn't respond. What do you even say to that? But it was weirdly validating, knowing that even Chloe's own mother saw the sheer absurdity of it all. So yeah, my girlfriend told me I was too nice, dumped me for a guy with etch. 6 months later, she was sleeping on couches while I was living my absolute best life. Not because I transformed into someone else, but because I stayed authentically me. And waited for someone who actually appreciated that. Boring isn't a bug. It's a feature. The right person will see it. The wrong one? They'll leave you for a bass player who can't pay rent. And honestly, that's the greatest favor they could ever do for you. What do you make of all this? Have you ever had boring turn out to be your superpower? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear your take. And if this resonated, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us, well, sometimes boring is best.